Well, Little Nightmares 2 certainly is an experience, isn't it? If disturbing abstract horror, vague lore and puzzle platforming is your jam, I imagine you've been having a blast with Tarsier Studios' latest little slice of spooky fun. In the game, you play as both Mono and Six, a pair of kiddies who have to work together to avoid being caught, smushed, eaten and otherwise ended by a series of smaller enemies and the occasional bigger, oogly-boogly monster grown-up. It's an oppressive, dark game in which you have very little power and are forced to simply hide from the majority of the creatures you meet until you can figure out how to outsmart them, which is, of course, a metaphor for growing up, because horror games just love a metaphor. Little Nightmares 2 producer Dave Mervick once said of the series, "We wanted to tell a story like the grim fairy tales and Roald Dahl stories, where kids don't necessarily have a great time. Giving a darker twist to a child's tale was one of the ambitions from the beginning." Suddenly I'm realising that all I want in life is to see the team at Tarsier create a 2D platformer adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but that's beside the point. What's interesting is how the team take the concept of childhood nostalgia and use it to beat you over the head with psychological horror. Little Nightmares 2, and by extension the series as a whole, is an absolute stroke of genius, appealing specifically to an audience of gamers who grew up playing DuckTales or Crash Bandicoot by forcing us to recontextualise the way we see our childhoods through re-examining the types of games that we played. As much as I'd just love to delve into the story proper, this is a spoiler-free video, so you can breathe a sigh of relief if you haven't got to the end yet. All I'll say is that I don't think the game's CRT televisions are an accident. Little Nightmares 2 is the latest hit in the ever-growing small child in a scary world genre of indie platformers, a niche which it seems plenty of people are desperate to see filled. Sure, cute, fun, family-friendly platformers have their place, but it turns out that what we really want is to transform into a helpless baby with a bag on our head so that we can be chased by someone 5 times bigger than ourselves. Come to think of it, this is probably also the appeal of Resident Evil Village. While the small child in a scary world platforming genre has been around for donkey's years, I'm specifically thinking of Heart of Darkness on the original PlayStation, these games have become a mainstay of the indie gaming genre ever since the release of Playdead's Limbo back in 2010. Traditional platformers are all about the power fantasy, as the player imagines a wonderful, imaginary world where they can run about and jump for more than 7 minutes without needing to lie down or get an inhaler. Or maybe that's just me. At a time when graphical prowess in gaming was limited, 2D platformers were bright and colourful and simple. Many of us grew up playing mascot platformers, whether they were Mario or Mega Man or Sonic or Mickey Mouse games. If you ask any millennial about their favourite platformer, their eyes will glaze over and they'll start mumbling about power-ups and coins. These games are our happy place. We subconsciously associate jumping between platforms and bopping enemies on the head with the innocence of childhood, and a time when we weren't constantly consumed by the overwhelming anxiety of adult life, and a world which just seems to get more and more awful with every passing year. As is pretty much always the case, where there's nostalgia, there's an opportunity for milking money out of people. So indie games developers have realised that making a platformer is a fantastic money spinner. You don't have to pay for that horrible third dimension or any polygons, you can stick to simple, often pixelated artwork. People will buy your game for a desperate chance to return to a simpler time, and often, the worse a game looks, the better it sells, because nostalgia is just weird like that. Heck, look at Kickstarter. People will happily throw money at 2D platformers that aren't even finished yet, just for the off chance that they might turn out to give us a slight reprieve from the crushing weight of adulthood and financial responsibility. Although as a side note, I should point out that pixel art games aren't easy to make. A good pixel art game can look absolutely amazing, taking the limitations of an earlier era of gaming and transforming it into a nuanced, beautiful, artistic genre in its own right. I have nothing but respect for the makers of these kinds of 2D games. What games like Little Nightmares and its sequel do, though, is take this nostalgic pandering in a different direction. Instead of reminding you of the simplicity and the ignorant bliss of being a child, they instead remind you of the darker parts of being a kid, of being afraid of the monsters in the closet, of feeling powerless as we're confronted by big angry bullies that we can't possibly face. And of course there are myriad games that interpret this idea of a scary world differently. The Scandinavians in Sweden and Denmark enjoy the dark, depressing horror route, so Playdead and Tarsier give us Limbo, Inside and Little Nightmares. But moving away from horror, we get games like Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori and the Will of the Wisps, deep, moody, bittersweet adventures about the pains of growing up. Then there's Hollow Knight, which yes is vaguely cute, but the game's world is dark and sinister. The overall theme of the game is one of entropy, the reminder that eventually, everything dies. Very cheerful. And of course the perfect fit for a Metroidvania that cribs off classic creepy platformers, filled with aliens and Draculas. Child of Light and Braid similarly are downright cute in their art style, but there's a sadness to the subject matter that takes it a long way from the colourful heyday of the platformer genre. There's also Unraveled, although personally I'd still call that a horror game because Yanni is freaking terrifying. I would also throw Gree into this game genre. It's a lot more relaxed than Little Nightmares, going in a different direction with its seriousness, but it's still an artsy-fartsy game. The cracked statue and the black bird are metaphors for depression. Did you get it? So it seems that the aging millennial gamer is desperate for atmospheric platformers that are about something. Well, something more deep than being a bad enough dude to rescue the princess and get back Uncle Scrooge's lucky dimes. We're kind of trapped. We want the gameplay of the classic games from our childhood, but we're not kids anymore. We want something a little meatier. Meatier. Little Nightmares. Ugh, I just kind of grossed myself out. Anyway, the Little Nightmares games are somewhat scathing of this desire for nostalgia that us old people are so obsessed with. You want your childhood back, they ask? Are you sure? Don't you remember being small and powerless and afraid of everything? Don't you remember how much it sucked to be convinced that every stranger you meet on the street was about to kidnap you? Even the game's 2D design has more depth than the older games it borrows from. It's a delightfully 2.5D design, where everything hints at a mysterious third dimension that might exist somewhere, but it's just barely out of reach. But here's the kicker. If you're playing Little Nightmares, and you're trying to take on the role of a cutesy little kid with a bag for a face, it's already too late for you. You're an adult, and there's no going back. At least I hope you're an adult. Hot tip, parents, don't let your kids play Little Nightmares too. Because, sure, you play as a kid in the game, but by the point that you're old enough to understand it, you look less like Mono or Six, and more like the teacher or the Thin Man. Little Nightmares 2 reminds you of your childhood fear of grown-ups, but when you put the game down and return to reality, you discover that you are the grown-up that you used to be so afraid of. Oof, that's deep. I'm gonna go play DuckTales until my brain shuts up and I can have fun again.